you're very welcome to the first in our series of Nutrition for Breeding Success webinars in partnership with the Irish Horse Board. My name is Jane Davis. I'm the Head of Equine Marketing at Connolly's Red Mills, and we're delighted to have you all with us this evening. And we're delighted to be partnering with the Irish Horse Board. This series of webinars has come together on the back of our partnership. And I suppose a lot of our aim with the partnership with the Irish Horse Board was to bring as much educational content around the area of nutrition, particularly for breeders and for sport horse producers via the channel of these webinars. So we really hope you enjoy this evening. We are going to be later on shortly hearing from Erin Campbell, who's a big part of our technical team, one of our nutritionists who service a lot of our customers. Erin's going to take you through the fundamentals around some of the key elements for nutrition to support mares in the late stages of their pregnancy, the late stages of gestation, and then looking ahead towards the breeding season. So we're really looking forward to hearing from Erin later on. And just to say as well, if you have any questions or comments, you can pop them in the comments. We will have a section at the end to cover those. And this session is going to be recorded, and we will be circulating a recording of the webinar to everyone who signed up as well in the next day or two. You'll also receive a PDF document with a written summary article covering the main topics covered this evening. So I'm delighted to be joined on the screen as well by Nadia Ray, Operations Manager with the Irish Horse Board. Nadia, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much, Jane. I suppose just to mirror exactly what Jane has said, we are absolutely delighted to be partnering up with Red Mills. Look, their reputation speaks for themselves. Given just the results today alone with Willie Mullins in Cheltenham, I think we all know how effective Red Mills methods are. And it's great to see so many breeders sign up for the series of webinars. The hunger for knowledge is just great to see, and no better people to deliver than Connolly's Red Mills. They are definitely the best in the business, and I look forward personally to hearing what Erin Campbell has to say. Wishing you all a really enjoyable evening and looking forward to this series of webinars.
That's brilliant, Nadia. Thank you so much. And just before we pass over to Erin, I just wanted to say thank you as well to Sarah Darker, who has been fundamental in pulling together all the design and the slides and the presentation that you're going to see this evening. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Erin Campbell, a key member of the Connolly's Red Mills technical and nutrition team. Thanks so much.
Evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So this evening, as the ladies have already touched on there, we're going to be looking at specifically late pregnancy and preparing for foaling, given the time of year we're in now. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned, but if we can all take away a few basics this evening, then that would be fantastic. So we'll get straight into it and kick along. And like Jane said, if you have questions as I go through things, or if there's something that you can't hear properly or something, then pop it in the comments, and we'll pick up on it at the end. So we'll kick on in. So obviously nutrition is a broad topic. There's a lot to be discussed when it comes to nutrition, and it's important that when we look at the nutrition of our brood mares, that we actually realize how critical it is. So it's critical for not only your mare, but obviously your developing foal as well. And because nutrition influences each stage of the reproductive cycle, as well as the growth of your foal and the long-term development of that foal, it really is a crucial part in the success of your breeding program. There's been a lot of research to show the negative effects of not taking nutrition into important considerations when it comes to breeding. And there's been a lot of links made with early embryonic loss, abortion, foal vigor at birth. So there are negative aspects when it's not looked at properly. So I think it's just to make sure that everyone is aware of how critical nutrition is. It doesn't have to be complicated if we can get the basics right. I know I keep saying that already, but if we can get the basics right, then we're off to a flyer basically. And I think we'll come on to it, but the nutrient requirements for the mare will change throughout the period of a pregnancy. And they need to be looked at in those different stages to make sure you can continue that progress throughout pregnancy into foaling and reconception again. As well as taking into consideration maybe the age of your mare, previous pregnancies, any climatic conditions that can affect, for example, your grass or forage. There's a lot of different aspects to take into consideration, but for us, one of the key points is that we start at the beginning. So the foundation of your future starts at conception. No matter what it is you're trying to produce, whether you're trying to produce a strong foal that you're going to sell as a foal, or a 3-year-old that you're going to sell off, or that top quality competition horse that you're going to take into competition yourself, starting at conception when it comes to nutrition is key, because the foundation for a horse's skeletal health and future athletic success can be influenced before it's even born. So we need to make sure that the broodmare has appropriate intake and balance of minerals, amino acids, different aspects of the diet to make sure that everything is passing through to the foal to encourage appropriate growth and development, and also to make sure that that colostrum and milk quality is of high quality as well. So yeah, start at the start, and we'll look at where we go from there. The main thing starting from conception is you're looking at the overall kind of condition of your mare, health. That will also be influenced by whether she's already got a foal at foot or not. So at the start, before you go to cover her or inseminate her, you would be looking at what her overall body condition is like. Is she a little bit on the light side? Is she a little bit on the heavy side? Is she already lactating and supporting a foal while you're then going to recover? So needs to be considered before you start that diet plan at the beginning. And then when it comes to breaking up the pregnancy and looking at the nutritional demands of the broodmare, these are the sections that I was talking about. So you start at conception is your first stage. Then you look at early pregnancy, which is the first 4 months, mid-pregnancy, which is months 5 to 8, and then late pregnancy, months 9 to 11. So this evening, we're going to focus specifically on late pregnancy, given obviously time of year and where a lot of you will be right now. But I just wanted to make the point that although we're not looking at, conception to mid-pregnancy, we're not looking at those stages tonight. I just wanted to reiterate the importance of starting at the start, and don't wait till you've got to month 9 of pregnancy and go, oh, I wonder what my mare looks like. Should I start feeding her? It really needs to start at the beginning. But we are going to focus on late pregnancy this evening. So one of the key points that we should think about right now in the final trimester of pregnancy is that fetal growth is not linear. So although I've said each stage of pregnancy is important, which it is, a lot of the fetal growth will happen from 7 months of pregnancy onwards. So you can see the graph where you have got, you've got a significant amount of growth from month 0 to month 7, but that curve significantly increases and gets a lot steeper from month 7 or 8 onwards. The last 3 months of pregnancy, therefore, which goes in line with this graph, are the most critical when it comes to nutrition, because that's when the most growth and development will be happening for your foal. You need to make sure, I've already said this, but you need to make sure before you increase calories or anything, or we come to looking at this diet in specific elements, that body condition is good. She's got to the final trimester in a healthy state. And then we look at increasing energy requirements, looking at supporting from a vitamin and mineral point of view as well. So during these stages, the weight of your foal will significantly increase in this final trimester. So at 7 months of pregnancy, you've got 20% of the birth weight, and the fetus can increase in weight by up to 1 pound per day in the last 90 days of gestation. So that accounts for over 60% of your total growth of that foal in utero. So it really highlights the importance of nutrition during that period specifically. So during that final trimester, it is so important that we support these mares from the inside out and support the foal as well as herself, and make sure that she's getting everything she needs. There has been studies that shown undernutrition in this period can cause the mare to utilize her own stores, because naturally she'll nourish the foal instead of herself. Then obviously your mare starts losing weight, and that has been linked to other complications such as embryonic loss or abortion. Sorry. So the importance of nourishing your mare is not only for the foal but also for your mare, because most likely you're going to have a long-term plan for her. You're going to want to probably get her pregnant again. So it's not just this pregnancy, it's making sure that she can stay healthy throughout to support the foal she has, and then continue on into whatever the plan is with her breeding program. So the main things we look at in terms of nutrition will be calories, protein, and then vitamins and minerals. All three of those things will need increased in the final trimester to meet nutritional requirements. So now we'll get into the nitty-gritty and what we actually need to give the mare, and for what reasons. So I said this already. Don't underestimate the basics. Forage is where it starts. Forage should be the majority of any horse's diet. It's no different for mares. For a healthy digestive tract and a healthy individual, forage should be the main source. For a lot of mares, that source of forage is usually grass. So consider the value of that grass. It depends, obviously, times of year and the quality of grass coming now into the next couple of months, hopefully, given the weather. Touch wood, God knows what it'll do. But spring grass obviously increases the nutritional value compared to in autumn or winter, where you'd have to be making up that quality with extra hay or haylage. However, forage only isn't going to meet nutritional requirements. So although they need plenty of it, and don't underestimate it, that needs to be matched with a hard feed when it comes to the final trimester. So in early pregnancy, in those first 4 months, forage, if your forage is good quality, that forage should be enough to meet requirements in that stage. And you can also consider a forage analysis if it's hay, or pasture analysis if it's grass, and send that to the Irish Equine Centre. You can get a full nutritional analysis and you have an idea of what you're dealing with there, if your land is deficient in anything, and if you need to be increasing any specific minerals, or if there's any particular problems on your land, then that's when things like that can be really helpful. Grazing is also a good form of exercise for your mares, helps them to maintain their body condition. It's something that shouldn't be underestimated, but we need to match up. So it's not just on its own. So then when we come to calories, they need to be increased. So overall, calories in general need to be increased during the final trimester. How you provide those calories will be dependent on the individual. So on the slide, you can see the body condition score and chart that we use. That's on a 0 to 5 scale. There is a 1 to 9 scale as well, but this is the 0 to 5 scale which we use. you want your mare to be around about 3 roughly on that scale to say that she's in pretty good body condition. And we want to add calories with a hard feed, but there's 2 ways of doing things. So we want you to feed, but don't overfeed. And the energy needs to increase from kind of that 5 months onwards, as we've mentioned. And mares are expected to gain approximately 10 to 15% of their initial body weight during pregnancy, most of which happens in this final trimester, this late gestation period. So by the last month of pregnancy, an average mare will consume roughly 20% more calories than what their general maintenance needs would be. So for mares that are generally straightforward, no issues, it's pretty easy. We'd go straight for something like stud cubes or stud mix, and you'd add in that as your hard feed for your extra calories that would provide obviously your protein and vitamins and minerals as well, but we'll come on to that specifically in a minute. That's your most straightforward way. If your mare's sitting at 3 roughly on that body condition score and scale, you go for the stud cubes or stud mix route, and it's pretty straightforward. If you have a mare that's generally a good doer or tends to carry that extra bit of condition, they might not need loads of extra calories, because the last thing you want is for your mare to become too heavy and overweight. That leads to extra unwanted problems. So for these kind of heavier mares, you would go for that top route there on the screen with the likes of the Grow Care Balancer. So that will again provide your protein and your vitamins and minerals that you need to support the foal and the mare, but without adding too many extra calories. Because if she's already on the heavier side, you don't want to keep adding more calories. So that's kind of your 2 main options, if you like, in terms of adding hard feed. If they're a good doer, you go for that top option with the Grow Care Balancer. If they're pretty straightforward or even a little bit underweight, they'll need more calories with your stud cubes. Or sometimes you actually need a little bit of both. So, for example, 2 different scenarios. You have a mare that's kind of slightly on the light side, but you're not particularly worried about her. So you want the calories from the stud cubes. You might need that little bit of extra, what we would say, micronutrient support. So like particularly your vitamins and minerals. So if you have land that you think is not 100%, or it might be lacking in certain things, that's where your balancer can help increase that nutrient profile in terms of the quality of nutrients. You're not necessarily increasing calories. That's where your stud cubes come in. But with the balancer, you're increasing the quality of nutrients. So you might use a bit of both. So there is different ways. It's a balancing act of how you do it and what you provide. But the main thing to get across here is that there are different ways of doing it to more or less achieve the same thing. You want to make sure that they get the quality of nutrition, basically, and that you're supporting that mare and foal, regardless of if you have other issues. So if they are a bit heavier, there's ways around it, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. And this is as well to highlight how important it is to monitor your body condition of the mare the whole way through. So starting conception, keep monitoring that body condition the whole way through pregnancy, so that it doesn't end up that you get to late gestation and she's either too underweight or very overweight, because either way, it's not ideal. You have issues either way. So monitor the body condition score and go with diet options from there according to either. Now, it's not always as clean cut as this. There might be other issues implicating what types of feed you'd use, and it's not to say that there's only 2 options with stud cubes or balancer. There are many other feeds, so that's where the one-on-one advice comes in. And contact us or contact the team. We're here to help. It's not that we're just trying to sell feed. We want to do the right thing for mares and foals to make sure that they're healthy, and ultimately that you get a nice healthy foal at the end of it. So monitoring it is key, and choosing hard feed from there is not always straightforward, but there are options. So then when it comes to protein, so I kind of mentioned the three things. You've got calories, protein, then vitamins and minerals. Protein is something that will continually increase in terms of requirements. So your protein requirements will increase gradually throughout your final trimester. And the amount of protein intake is important, but the quality of that protein intake is crucial. So you'll see on the graph here on the left where you've got protein requirements in month 9. These numbers are because there's a range. It's not just one value. So somewhere between 800 grams and 960 grams of protein in month 9. In month 10, you've got somewhere between 840 grams and a kilo. And then in month 11, you've got somewhere between 890 grams and just over a kilo of protein. That's important that those protein requirements are met, but the quality of that protein is really, really important. So you'll hear, or you might have heard in the past, people talking about things like lysine. Lysine is the first limiting amino acid, which basically means that the horses cannot generate it themselves. It's limiting in the body, so it has to be provided by the diet. So you need to feed it to them. They can't generate it themselves. There will be a certain level of lysine in the grass, but not enough when it comes to the final trimester of pregnancy. So then the lysine requirements are something that needs to be looked at specifically as well. This falls in under the amount of protein in total, but the lysine requirements have specific ranges as well. So for example, month 9 there you'll see 31 to 34 grams a day. Month 10 it slightly increases to between 36 and 43, and then month 11 again gradually increasing from 38 to 46 grams a day. So this is all well and good. These are all numbers and that's grand saying these are your requirements, but to make it practical, you need to know how to meet those requirements. So hopefully this might make a little bit more sense. Now, I've used Stub Cubes and Grow Care throughout as 2 examples, but I just want to reiterate that these aren't the only 2 feeds. There are a lot of options. So, speak to us specifically if you want to know a little bit more about this, but just to give you an idea. So, if you take the whole diet into account, which always needs to be done, don't just look at hard feed or just look at grass or whatever. You need to look at how you can reach those requirements, so how you can reach protein and lysine requirements. Basically, you can do it in either way. I mentioned about Feed and Grow Care or Stud Cubes, sometimes both. It's easier to give you a bit of context just to separate those and give you an idea. So, for example, if you're feeding 6 kilos of Stud Cubes, it is roughly 3 stub scoops. There's about 2 kilos of Stud Cubes in one big round stub scoop. You will be getting 62 grams of lysine per day and around 1.4 kilos of protein per day. So that's what you'd be feeding in those very late stages of pregnancy to meet those lysine and protein requirements. Now, you can also see in the graph underneath how pasture and grass will have certain levels of protein. These are obviously estimates from the data that we have available to us. So that will be considered in there as well. Then, on the other hand, if you were to feed, for example, around 900 grams of Grow Care per day, you would be getting 46 grams of lysine and 1 kilo of protein. So my point here is not to worry about numbers specifically, but to show that you can feed differently and reach the same goal. Protein requirements are being met with both of those options there. So if you only feed 900 grams of balancer a day, you're meeting protein requirements. If you have to feed 6 kilos of Stud Cubes a day, you're still meeting requirements. But obviously you're getting more calories in one way than the other. So it's just to highlight that. It's not that you need to, remember all these numbers and things. It's just to show that there's more than one way to, or you can kill. What's that word? What's that it's saying? I can't remember it. Right. So I think I've made my point on protein. Sorry, I'm starting to waffle. Okay, vitamins and minerals. We'll move on. So there's a variety, huge variety of vitamins and minerals in late gestation. And it can look very complicated because you can think, how do I make sure all of this is done and how do I make sure they're getting everything they need? There's a lot to take into consideration. But in any of those diets that I've used as examples, all of those requirements will be being met because they're fully balanced with all your vitamins and minerals that you need. But this is to make you aware of how things increase. So, for example, things like calcium and phosphorus requirements will double in the final trimester. They both have huge impacts on supporting, skeletal development. So they're crucial when it comes to bone health of your foals. Then trace mineral supplementation is vital for the foal's own stores. I'll touch again on that in the next slide, I think it is. But things like zinc, copper, and manganese in particular can have a direct impact on the foal actually storing that themselves when it's fed to the mare. I'll touch on that in a minute. And then vitamins. So your foal is born without any vitamin A stores. Vitamin A in particular is key for progesterone levels of the mare, eye function of your foal. So if you can keep vitamin A levels high in your foal or in your mare, then it will help the mare. Although the foal won't be born with any, it'll help the mare, and you can make sure that you're supporting her on that side. Then things like vitamin D for bone mineralization and again skeletal health, that's tied into your calcium and phosphorus. And vitamin E. So vitamin E has been linked with colostrum quality and IgG levels. I'll touch again on that in a minute. But feeding higher levels of vitamin E has been shown to increase the quality of colostrum. So things like that can have significant impacts on the quality of colostrum. That's giving your foal obviously a better start in life. So that's crucial. We want to make sure that all of these levels are met. They will be met in the feed. If you have then grazing that's specifically lower in certain minerals, that's when things like supplements can help. Particularly things like bone development supplements can be a benefit if you know that you've got a mare that's thrown a few foals that have been prone to things like OCDs. Supplements can help for things like that, not only to the mare in the last stages of pregnancy, but also during lactation and in the early stages for the foal. So we obviously have our supplement company, our sister company for an equine. So that's where we would bring things like that in where it's needed. But really, you can keep it simple, and we like to keep it simple where it's possible. If supplements are needed, then they obviously have a place. I mentioned about things like copper. So when I said about trace minerals in terms of copper, zinc, and manganese, there has been some research to show that supplementing your mare with additional copper in late pregnancy, so that final trimester, has increased the liver stores of your live foal. So there's direct passive transfer of that copper when you give it to the mare straight into the liver of the foal. So if you're supplementing your mare in final trimester pregnancy, your foal is getting a better start because copper is crucial for things like soft tissue structures, skeletal development, all of those things that we want to support in late pregnancy. If you can easily supplement your mare, it's so straightforward, and we all know how important x-rays and things are these days. If you can if you can supplement your mare easily, then, and it's relatively cheap to do as well, considering it doesn't take a lot, it really is worthwhile, because skeletal development and skeletal health plays such a crucial role in the market that I think it's well worthwhile. When we know the research is there, it definitely directly benefits the foal. So I just thought I'd touch on that specifically. And then when it comes to, I mentioned earlier about vitamin E, the diet, although we want to support obviously the pregnancy and making sure the foal has everything they need, the diet can also impact the quality of colostrum and milk. So obviously we'll all be well aware that colostrum is your, your first milk produced by the mare immediately post foaling, your thick, sticky, yellowish liquid. The quality of that colostrum refers to, we all always talk about IgG levels, so the immunoglobulins or the antibodies. It's basically representative of the immunity of that foal. So there's a lot of different factors that can affect colostrum quality. Weight loss, protein restriction in the last 90 days, a lot of things like that can reduce colostrum quality, but there are also things that we can do to improve colostrum quality. So any good quality stud feed will provide generally the recommended levels for vitamin E, but additional supplementation, as I mentioned earlier, can be of benefit. Specifically, I would really target colostrum quality and milk quality when it comes to supplementation for older mares, maiden mares, mares that you don't know how they will perform for you, or if there is a doubt. Things like a live yeast probiotic. So there's lots of different types of probiotics and stuff out there, but generally when it comes to equine nutrition, and people mention either yeast on its own or they talk about probiotics on their own, it's called SC in a lot of bags. Saccharomyces cerevisiae is what it's called, but not that you need to worry about that. There's been a lot of research that's looked at supplementing live yeast to a mare's diet in late pregnancy and has shown significantly higher levels of IgGs. So you can get that yeast supplementation through the likes of GrowCare. So we have added yeast within the GrowCare. And I mentioned earlier about using a balancer to elevate that nutrient profile. That's in many different ways. So you've got extra vitamin E in there, you've got extra yeast in there. Those things will help specifically colostrum quality. So you've also got alongside that, the next column there, you can see prebiotics. So we talk about moss and FOS. They're also already in GrowCare. So it's not that you need different supplements for all of these things to improve colostrum quality. Adding a small amount of GrowCare balancer can have a significant impact on the quality of the mare's diet and the quality of the colostrum, which in turn obviously is giving your foal the best start possible. We don't really know how some of these things work in terms of their mode of action within the mare, but the research is there to show that it does have a positive impact. So again, a relatively straightforward way of improving that overall nutrient profile. Other ways we can look at increasing IgG levels are through omega-3 fatty acids. So again, there's been studies to show that supplementing or adding in omega-3s to the maternal diet can increase the quality of the colostrum for the suckling foal, and therefore you're increasing those immune defenses that they'll have early on in life. And it's a straightforward way of doing it. So something like your Kentucky Karen oil would be an easy way of adding in extra omega-3s. There will be a level of omega-3s and vitamin E in fresh grazing, but to make sure that you're getting it through the diet is, like, you don't know the levels often unless you get a pasture analysis. It'll tell you the levels of vitamin E, but you often don't know the levels of those omega-3s that they're getting from grazing. So adding in an oil can help from that point of view. Obviously, it helps with their coat and everything as well. So again, simple ways of increasing those profiles and just optimizing the overall quality of what you're receiving in the diet. And then as you come closer to foaling, like we've mentioned a lot there in a short space of time of how you're targeting increasing those calories dependent on the body condition, increasing the protein for those reasons of optimizing the stores for the mare, improving the development of improving the growth and development for the foal, and then also the micronutrients, so your vitamins and minerals, and elevating that profile as well. That's kind of all you can do when it comes to diet, alongside increasing the quality of colostrum in certain ways. Then it's down to practicalities and preparing for foaling, which all of you will be obviously, pros at this stage. Making sure that your veterinary work is up to date, your mare has got all the attention she needs. If you've got to around due date, you're a couple of weeks out, if your mare has been receiving appropriate nutrition the whole way through, she looks nice and healthy, you've no considerable issues when it comes to her condition or her diet, you've done about all you can do when it comes to, addressing the diet. Making sure that she's adjusted to her surroundings, whether she's going away to foal or staying at home to foal or whatever, giving her time to just adapt to that is a key point, because if you do all the hard work getting her to where you need her to be in terms of condition and preparing her for being ready to foal, moving her so all of a sudden can then cause them to drop away in terms of condition and just reduce their own immunity. Never mind the foal. So simple things like that can obviously have an impact. Copper dosing, we mentioned, that is a simple way of helping, again, the foal, the start that you're going to give the foal in terms of a skeletal health point of view. And then finally, when it comes to that last couple of weeks, if you've got to the last couple of weeks and you're starting to panic, I'm afraid it's too late. You don't want to make any drastic changes to the diet in that stage. You want to, I spoke at the start about how important it is to go from the start, to plan ahead, to make sure you're monitoring the body condition throughout. And that's why, because it's a steady, gradual build, a steady progression to make sure she is where you need her to be when you get to foaling. If you're a couple of weeks out and you're panicking, there's not a lot you can do. You have to hope for the best at that stage. The last thing you want for your mare in that really late stage is to make some drastic changes to the diet. You're really at a high risk of things like colic at that stage. So we would never advise anything like that. We always try and push the narrative to our customers that you really need to plan ahead and make sure that we can get her there in the right condition, and make sure that all those requirements have been met along the way. So I think that's about it from me. I have probably waffled on for long enough. I hope I haven't whizzed through that too quickly. The key take-home points that I would say to anybody is make sure you've got good quality forage, whether that's grass, hay, bit of both. Make sure that's good quality. If it's not, consider a pasture analysis so you know what you're dealing with. Though anything you're deficient in or particularly low in can be made up by either the diet or a supplement. So even if it's low in certain things, you're better off knowing, because that can be improved on. So good quality forage, monitor the body condition, then you choose a hard feed. Talk to us about any specific problems. So if you've got a laminitic mare, a mare with EMS, an older mare that you're trying to get your last foal out of, a maiden mare with a specific problem, that's where talking to us really comes into play. My contact details are on the screen. Feel free to contact us at any time or ring the office or whatever if you have any queries about specific hard feed to match up with that good quality forage. And then at the end, you're really looking at elevating that nutritional profile to increase things like colostrum quality and really give that foal the best possible start. So they're kind of the key things. Don't underestimate the basics. Match up your hard feed, but talk to us about it. And there's ways to elevate things like colostrum through diet in pretty simple ways, really. I hope that hasn't been too quick.
Well done, Erin. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane.
Appreciate that. That was very interesting. Erin, you mentioned there just about people getting in touch. What's the easiest way for people to contact you or members of the technical team?
Probably email, if I'm honest, because we could be on the road, we could be in with a customer. If you email us, we'll always get back to you. Even if you email us by saying, look, I need to have a chat with someone, here's my mobile number, then we can ring you back. Sometimes, like, my number's there, feel free to ring or message or whatever, but sometimes if we're in with customers or things, it's not always able at the time.
And just to say to anyone who's watching live, as I mentioned at the start, this recording will be circulated again, but we also have a PDF article, so a written article covering the main topics that Erin's covered in tonight's slides. So if anyone wants to take it their own time, read through it, that will be emailed to everybody who registered as well, which will be really helpful. And included in that will be all the contact information. And we do have a portal on the Red Mills website as well. It's called Ask Our Experts. So anybody can pop their nutritional queries there. And there is quite an extensive library of written articles covering all kind of the different topics around nutrition for breeding. So maybe getting into some of the more specifics that Erin mentioned there at the end. But as I say, tonight's session will be circulated. But just before we let you go, Erin, there has been just a couple of questions that have come in there. The first one that came in, would there be a preference, taking it that they're both the same quality, would there be a preference over hay or haylage?
The main thing is quality. So if you have a chance to get your hands on really good haylage over not so good hay, then I would go with that. If you have a preference, or if you can get better hay than haylage, go with that. It's really down to quality. Myself, in terms of practically, I like feeding hay, but when it comes to the breakdown, and that's where the analysis can kind of help if you do send away a sample or anything, the quality is key. But I personally like to feed hay.
So really, yeah, no, that makes total sense based on everything you've said. So comes down to quality. And then just another question there in terms of how much copper do you recommend, and can you give too much copper?
So general recommendation would be, if you take, for example, our Copper Max syringes, I would say 1 per month in month 9, 10, and 11. So that last trimester, 3 syringes of copper, 1 in month 9, 1 in month 10, 1 in month 11. Try and do them at the start of each month so that you're not given that copper in the last 2 weeks of pregnancy, because we just try and stay away from anything in the last couple of weeks, anything different. And always make sure that they've had at least some hay before you administer any syringes like that.
So not on an empty stomach.
Not on an empty stomach.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Ideal. And I suppose just to mention to anyone watching as well that there is actually an offer on the Copper Max paste at the moment. And I know we mentioned the Kentucky Karen oil in the presentation as well. So for every 4.5 litre of the Kentucky Karen oil, there's a promotion that you get a free Copper Max paste, which is a free syringe. So that's available in most of our stockists who stock for an equine, or if not, it's through the Red Mill store. You'll even get it online there. So that's a handy one for anyone who's looking to stock up over the next kind of couple of weeks. And then I suppose, Erin, just to wrap up, like, what would be the most common kind of conundrums or questions that you'll start to get around this time of year, looking ahead, I suppose, that late gestation for sport horse mares?
There's 2 common queries I would say that we get. Number 1, I kind of briefly touched on at the end, where people get to late pregnancy and they panic. This is why we have this now in March. Like, there's no point waiting until then. You're not going to be able to change anything at that stage. So yeah, I suppose that's basically irrelevant. But what I'm trying to say is make sure you plan ahead. One of the common things we get is, obviously, when it gets to the final trimester, you're really thinking of what kind of foal you're going to get. A lot of people, given now the way things like x-rays are so important, a lot of people ringing up with concerns over, even before the foal is on the ground, over things like OCDs, joint issues, skeletal development, a lot of bone health focus.
Mhm.
So I think if you've had a mare that's kind of shown you that she's got some sort of a genetic predisposition to having throwing these foals with um OCDs, problems, epiphysitis, like all those kind of issues, you can start again in the final trimester by supplementing your mare with things like we have a supplement there called Calgrow. That's a really beneficial way to help elevate all of those minerals and vitamins that are needed to support skeletal health. And I think the way things have gone now and how important x-rays are, that's one of the key things that people are kind of worried about. And they're preempting, even maybe if they didn't have a foal before
Mm.
from a mare that had any sort of similar issues, they're preempting how important that is now. Um, so that's where I mentioned, supplements can have specific benefits. So for things like that, that's where the likes of something like Calgrow could help.
And tell me this as well, because I think I've heard you guys kind of talk about this before. If you have those kind of future concerns in terms of skeletal development, and you've got one eye on selling your young stock, be it as a foal or as a 3-year-old, and you've all that kind of bone development piece in mind, you're almost better off getting that last trimester right. Is more important. That nearly looks after the foal when it's born, as such that you can keep things more simple once the foal lands. That is the critical time, what we're talking about here, this late gestation, to allow it make more simple when your foal lands. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, completely. That's when the most skeletal development will happen. You'll have a lot of bone remodeling and bone turnover once the foal is starting to move and load on those structures. But their initial development is in utero. So if you can support that within the final trimester and they can grow and develop appropriately, then
Mhm.
yeah, you're at a much better start than waiting to see what your foal looks like and think, oh, might do something about that.
And the next webinar I should mention will be all more about the foaling and the support that we can give foals. So that'll be coming up soon enough. So we'll keep an eye out for the date for that. But I just have 2 more questions that have come in, Erin. Dan has asked, any further benefits to the foal after birth to give copper to the mare?
Not to the mare. So once your foal has been born, you're better off supplementing your foal. So once the foal's on the ground, supplementing your mare won't have as much of an impact. Yes, you're increasing her stores, it will affect her milk. But once your foal's on the ground, and if they're over 2 or 3 weeks of age, you can then look at supplementing the foal from there. Whether it's by just giving, a little bit of creep feed, or if you need a specific supplement. So if it is for things like copper, then you can look at supplementing the foal directly. But once you have your foal on the ground, I wouldn't give it to the mare.
So you're benefiting the foal while the mare is still carrying the foal, but once the foal is on the ground, then you're treating the foal as an individual.
As an individual, exactly.
And that's probably where you probably need to talk to your nutritionist or your vet, or even understand your pasture analysis. You could be somewhere that's quite deficient in copper where you might need to look at that. But that's probably an area where you probably seek a bit of guidance, I'd imagine.
Yeah, 100%. And like copper is a hot topic, as well as like we talked about bone there and joints and stuff. Copper is a hot topic. Generally, Irish land is low in copper, so that's why it's a hot topic. But yeah, if there's specific things like that, then come to us and have a chat about it.
Ideal. And then just one final question. Bear me 1 second. What feed products can help increase the longevity of a mare's breeding life? And the second part, what feeds are most important for older breeding mares in particular? So I suppose it's that long-term investment, nutritional kind of investment and maintenance of your mare, so that you're probably, keeping her as well as possible for as long as possible to be able to keep her breeding.
That really is, like you mentioned, longevity. That really is a long-term thing. So quality is important. You'd be sick hearing us talk about quality, quality is where you will improve the longevity. So if you really look at, even if it's dividing every year into those stages, early pregnancy, make sure your forage is good. If it's not good enough, add a little bit of balancer. Keep monitoring body condition, keep adding in the quality along the way. That is what's going to get you longevity.
And it is exactly that, though. It's consistency, isn't it? It's no good probably just pumping everything into her in that last trimester and then not ignoring it again for the next couple of months. And just for people then who want to, obviously they've got the good forage, they've got good grazing, they're happy, they've ticked all those boxes. But your mare is a good doer. You know, so you don't want her to get fat on hard feed. Just to remind people, the balancer is calorie free, isn't that right? So you're not going to add on weight as such, but that's where your nutrients, if you want to top up that vitamin and mineral, it's the balancer. If your mare struggles to hold her condition, if she struggles to hold her weight, if it's been a tough winter, etc., lots of reasons, you've got your stud cubes, your stud mixes. So for anyone kind of wanting to look at that, you know, annual nutritional program for their mares, but weight or condition is a concern, perhaps the balancer is a way to look at. And you're only feeding by the cup, so it's good value.
So like you're looking, that's why I use those two as examples, because they're two kind of opposites in terms of why you would use either one. Like they're fed very differently. 6 kilos of something compared to 900 grams of something looks very different, but from a nutrient profile, they're getting the same. Calories is different. That's where the volume comes into play. It's looking at making sure your quality is high, and again, like you said, keeping it consistent. Just to touch on that, like in that question you mentioned about, was it an older mare or something?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where having a talk with us might be beneficial. Older mares are more prone to metabolic issues, things like laminitis, EMS. There's lots of different metabolic problems that can occur with older mares specifically. That's where you might need something slightly different. You might need a lower starch diet, for example, to manage those types of conditions. There are lots of different products. We can then help you with those things in particular. Like I use those two products in terms of stud cubes and balancer, but they're not the only two products. There's a lot of options. So if there's specific problems with older mares, that's where I would contact us directly and we can help you there.
Very good. You mentioned there the difference between feeding 6 kilos and 900 grams, and everybody's scoop is different. So I think one of the recommendations I've heard you guys talk about a lot is just weighing your scoop. If it's the stud cube, stud mix, if it's the horse care, if it's Performacare, if it's a coffee mug that you're scooping the balancer out of, it's just to put on a basic kitchen digital scales and just get a grasp. You only have to do it once, and then you know.
Just get an idea. Get a guide of, everyone knows what their typical scoop will look like. So take what you think is your typical scoop, weigh that, have an idea. Take what you think is your typical cup and weigh that and have an idea, because some people are scoop heavy, some people aren't. So it's important to weigh it. It's important to know how much you're giving.
And particularly if you're not the one feeding your horses all the time, if you've got people helping or coming in, it can vary. But I would say there's articles on the website that talk about those, and it sounds so basic, but it can have such a big impact, just literally being able to kind of monitor the weight of your scoop, but also feeding guidelines. Sometimes it can look quite complicated on the slides, but I think the peace of mind, what you're trying to say is it's all in the feed. And the feeding guidelines are quite straightforward. They're all on the back of the bags, but they're also available on the website. Or again, you can talk to the team if you want to get a handle on how much you should be feeding. Because again, I suppose it's a reality. Cost is always a factor too. So you don't want to be kind of overdoing it or having waste when you could keep things quite efficient. Yeah.
And that's where making sure that you've good quality forage comes into play, because you won't need to be then overdoing it on feed.
Yeah, brilliant. Erin, thank you so much. I don't see any more questions coming in, so we'll probably wrap it up there. But like I mentioned, the recording will be circulated, as will the documents and all the contact info and links to any other resources that you guys might find helpful. So Erin, thank you so much for your time this evening. Thank you to everyone who has joined, and a special thank you as well to the Irish Horse Board. We're really, really delighted to be able to partner with them to be able to bring these kind of sessions to an audience. And yeah, we'd be delighted as well to hear your feedback, or if there's topics as well that you'd like covered in future webinars, email them through, and we'd only be too delighted to look after it. So yeah, thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the next webinar.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.